Hello and welcome to the MovieKing Podcast. My name is David Jurmann and I'll be your host. On today's episode, I'm going to review the film Final Destination: Bloodlines. So the Final Destination franchise has been interesting to me. I actually just watched all 6 movies in a matter of like a week or something, and I never really gave a lot of them a watch before because it just wasn't a franchise I had given much thought to. Kind of similar to the Saw franchise, which came out, like a long time ago. Never really watched many of them, but then I just kind of gave all of them a watch once one of the newer ones came out, and that's unfortunately kind of how I am with some franchises. Like, I'll just, never really get to them, and then as soon as a new one comes out, I'll just try to watch them all, just so I'm all caught up. I mean, it's like, these aren't movies you probably need to watch all the others to understand it, but I don't know, I just feel like, especially if I'm going to review a movie, I feel like it's kind of partly my duty and like obligation to then say like, okay, I actually watched a lot of the other ones, so now I can actually compare it to how the other ones have been. But really, there are 2 things that got me to watch these Final Destination movies, and one of them is actually a movie that came out earlier this year called The Monkey. I think I actually reviewed that one on here not too long ago, so you can find that on a playlist not too long ago. But basically, that movie was something I was really looking forward to. I just kind of love the concept of like this monkey, this toy monkey just like killing everyone in really terrible ways. And that's kind of, I thought that would be a real fun, entertaining movie. And it just wasn't as good as I was hoping it would be. It wasn't as entertaining, wasn't as funny, not really as witty. And I don't know, I was just really disappointed and let down by that movie. But even though that concept is very similar to what Final Destination is, but then the other thing that got me to watch this is, of course, the new Final Destination coming out, and I thought the trailer looked surprisingly good. And then I actually heard good things about the movie, too, to go along with it. So then that made me be like, oh, you know what? I'm actually just going to go check out all these movies and see how they are. And now having seen all the Final Destination movies, I'll just say that I'm not this franchise's biggest fan. Like, if you're a huge Final Destination fan and you're listening to this, forgive me, because I just didn't care for most of the movies. I thought, maybe like half of them were entertaining-ish, and the other half were pretty bad. I thought the original, which a lot of people are a big fan of, was very disappointing, and I know that's going to be super hot take, because I think that's kind of like the general consensus everyone has about this franchise, is like, the original is one of the only really good ones, but I just didn't care for it. To me, it felt like, I don't know, it almost felt like a test. Like, it felt like, this is proof of concept, Like, oh, this is how we would want to do this kind of movie if we had the money to make it better. And then I felt like they kind of, as they went on, they kind of progressed on what this actually was, which, I think the concept here is great. I just didn't care that much about the movie. I didn't find it that entertaining or fun. I didn't really care about the characters. Just didn't really work for me as a film. And then I thought, too, the sequel was a lot better. I actually thought the production value felt a lot bigger and grander, even though it wasn't. It was only a few $1,000,000 more. But I think that just says a lot about the director and who's involved with these movies, because the fact that such little, obviously millions of dollars is not a little amount of money, but like in the grand scheme of things, just a few $1,000,000 in comparison actually made a huge difference. And I would also say the sequel has one of the best, if not the best, premonition scene in the franchise, with the log truck scene. And if you don't know what I mean by that, I'll expand on that pretty soon. But just kind of going on further, I thought the third film was okay. It had some good death scenes, but overall wasn't very good. The roller coaster idea was fun. Some decent actors in there at least, but I just thought it got too convoluted. It wasn't really making a lot of sense. I was just kind of like, it's getting old. It wasn't really working for me as much. The fourth one is borderline parody. It's just so silly, but not in a good way. Like, of course, I wanted more silliness from this franchise. I mean, my main problem with the first movie was that it just took itself way too seriously. But I think the fourth one is just so far off into, like, Goofy land that it just becomes like Looney Tunes and gets really stupid. It's a really bad movie. Not to mention it has a lot of problems besides that, and then it's also very gimmicky. Like, it has, that was when 3D was getting very big at the time, so like every 2 minutes in the movie you just have something like flying at the screen and really like bad CGI, and it just looked so fake. It looked so bad and stupid. I was just like watching it like, who thought this was a good idea? Like, it just looks terrible. The end credits are probably the only, like, semi, like, decent part of that idea of the 3D stuff, but I don't know. Really bad movie. And then the fifth one is actually pretty entertaining. I would say it's easily the best since the second film, and actually has a pretty compelling plot. Like, I think it has a good idea. There's some good deaths. I think the eye surgery death is like crazy good. And I would say the movie lost me a little bit in like the third act. It was getting a little bit like, I don't know how I feel about this. But the very end of the movie, like when the final couple scenes, redeemed the whole thing for me. I thought it was great. It just kind of made the film a lot more interesting, and also just made the film feel a lot more, I guess, necessary to the whole of this franchise. And so that was really cool. But now we have Final Destination Bloodlines. And just to quickly elaborate on the story for these movies before I get into my thoughts, basically these films are about a group of people who cheat death because of a premonition someone has, and then each person who survives what should have been a deadly incident for them, each person who did survive begins to die in very horrible, disturbing ways. Real fun, right? But actually, it is kind of fun because a lot of the deaths are just very absurd and over the top, and like the physics of the Final Destination world is just so out of whack. Like, the most tiny little thing will just cause like a massive ripple, and like it's so silly, but you can't help but laugh at it, and that's kind of what makes this franchise kind of fun. Even in the bad movies, like there's still some entertainment to be had sometimes. Like, oh, how is this gonna go? Um, but anyway, this movie kind of dives into some ideas about how the survivors could have kids and what could happen to those families who weren't supposed to even exist. It's a cool idea. I mean, the other ones, like the other films, all just kind of follow this one group in one time. This movie kind of spans generations to kind of show, like, oh, if this family wasn't supposed to exist, would death come for them too? And that's a really cool idea. And I think that just kind of, I don't know, just kind of elevates the franchise a little bit. It just kind of, shows that there's still room for growth and still room for fresh ideas. It doesn't just repeat the same thing over and over again. Like, I mean, this franchise was kind of becoming like Saw in a way, where it was just repeating the same thing over and over again each movie, and you're just kind of like, where's the new thing? And the last Saw movie just really changed things up. Same thing with Final Destination. It really just tried to freshen things up a bit, shows there's still life in this thing left. And just to get right into it, I think this is the best Final Destination movie by far. If you love the original movie, maybe you'll disagree. You might think that this is not nearly as well made as that one. I don't know. But to me, as someone who didn't care for the first movie and just isn't really a big fan of a lot of them in this franchise, this movie is exactly what I've been looking for. It is just such a fun movie that evolves the original concept. It has the best characters in any of these movies. It has some of the most fun deaths and one of the best premonition scenes as well. I really just had a blast with this film. It's super entertaining. Just to elaborate on what I said before, what makes these deaths so entertaining is largely the setup. One thing shown in the trailer is like a glass bottle breaks and a piece of the glass falls on top of some ice, so it just kind of blends in there. And then a person will then pour a drink and pour some ice in it, which also has the shard of glass in it. So then a lot of like the scene is like this waiting game of what's gonna happen with the glass in the drink. Is someone gonna swallow it? Is the glass even gonna be involved in the person's death? We know someone's gonna die here, but we don't know exactly how. And that's just the fun of this franchise. And you may think this sounds like the least fun thing ever, but I think it's very entertaining to just watch like this small little thing, like that is going to be a problem later. Like, like a Quiet Place, like it has that scene where you have like like the nail sticking out of the stair, and like, someone's going to step on it and you're just waiting for that moment. That's what these movies are kind of about. It's like that kind of feeling, but much more comedic and entertaining than, like in A Quiet Place, it's supposed to be like, ooh, that really hurt, and this you get a little bit of that too, but it's more for laughs. And this franchise is known to have the most insignificant things cause someone's demise, which makes a lot of it more entertaining and unpredictable to watch. I like how this movie also plays with the idea of how to stop death and try to survive through it. The movie acknowledges past films and sort of the rules they've established, and sort of comments on some ways to possibly cheat death further than you already did. But I'm also grateful that this movie just goes back to basics. It doesn't try to tackle all the convoluted stuff a lot of the sequels did that made a lot of them less fun. Like, a lot of the sequels, mainly really 3 through 4, especially like 3 and 4, 5 a little bit too, even 2 also did it. Like, really, most of the movies did it. Just kind of kept convoluting things and kept adding these rules and layers to things that just made it less simple and just less like you it was less about the concept and more just about like, well, see if this happens then we have to look at this, and it's less fun when you kind of get into rules. It's more entertaining when you just kind of watch it happen. I like the monkey, wasn't a great movie, but it was very simple. It was just monkey bangs the drum, someone's gonna die, and Final Destination is like, someone survived here, they're gonna die. Like, then this movie Bloodlines also kind of gets more into that, and also plays a little bit with the order of which things will happen. It was just a really nice, fresh pace of things. And as I said, the characters here are actually good people this time. I wanted the main characters to live because they didn't seem like bad, undeserving people. They're just a family trying to live another day. They're flawed people. A lot of them maybe aren't, the best human beings, but they're at least like trying to be good. And that is enough here to make me be like, oh, I actually kind of care about them. Especially the sibling dynamic here, the sister and brother, I thought was really nice. There actually is some nice development there of like, and then relating to the mother, the girl's mother, and just it just has a lot going on there that's like, oh, I actually kind of care about these characters, and I'm invested to see where they go. Another thing I really liked here is Tony Todd, the actor Tony Todd. This is, I believe, his final performance ever before he died, but certainly his final performance in this franchise in any case. And he's been a common thread with these movies. He's been in at least 3 or 4 of them. But this time they actually had him improvise with his lines and kind of say what he wanted to say just as a send off to his character. Because I think he knew, Tony Todd, that, I think he knew that he was on his last legs at this point and just wasn't going to be around much longer. So they kind of let him play around with his performance here and just kind of get to do something a little different. And I thought it was a very touching scene, in my opinion. For a silly horror movie like this, it actually had some weight to it, and also just felt like it tied into the themes of the movie. And I thought that was just really nice, really nicely done. Also, to touch on the premonition scene in this movie, I loved it here. It's so well made. The whole thing takes place on this big sky tower up in the sky, and it has like a dance thing going on. It's very suspenseful. Like, I actually thought like the build up was really strong. There's a great song choice. The song "Shout." If you hear it a lot of parties, it's really good. So the scene's very well edited. Has some pretty gnarly and funny ways to die. It's just everything you want out of the premonition scene, and I just had such a good time with it. Like, just watching it, I was like, this is actually not even just like a good scene, but it's like well made too. Like, it's really entertaining. And I thought it was just like a great way to start off the movie. And then the last big positive I have here is that it has a great tonal balance. Some Final Destination movies kind of struggle with getting the tone right. Like I kind of mentioned, the first movie was a bit too serious. I think the fourth one is too goofy. Bloodlines manages to find a great balance. It strikes a great balance here where the overall tone is silly and doesn't take itself seriously, which is what I want out of this franchise. I don't want it to take itself that seriously, but it does take itself seriously just enough where you actively care about what's happening and want to root for the characters to survive. I thought that was a great touch there. I just think they nailed it, and I really just, it was a great balance because it's hard to get it right here. It's hard to make it scary and fun and silly and not serious at the same time, but it found a way to just blend it all together in a way that I thought worked for me. Now, getting into a couple of my issues with the movie, I think one is just that it has a few overly cheesy scenes. Like, I think a lot of these movies have some cheesy moments, but this one in particular does have a few that did stand out of just like, that was a little maybe much. It kind of went a little bit like too cheesy. I don't have a problem with cheese, especially in a movie that like isn't taking itself that seriously, but I think it was a little too much at times. And also, I just wasn't a huge fan of the usual tropes we've kind of come to expect from this franchise with the family and friends, doubting the person who's like trying to warn everyone entirely until something bad happens. Like, that's just, It's just something you come to expect from these movies, but I wish they kind of had a way to change it or avoid it. Um, it's not a big part of the movie, so it didn't bother me that much. It's just I wish we got a little bit better than that. But those are really my only two major kind of gripes. And really, Final Destination Bloodlines is a movie I don't really have a lot of issues with. Like, I can't really pinpoint too many problems, but it's just not a movie that's perfect, if that makes sense. Like, I don't think it's a flawless movie, but I just can't really say, like, oh, that's definitely a problem, that's a big problem. It's just small little problems that adds up, I guess, to make, a not perfect movie. I don't know. Maybe a little random sounding, but that's just how I felt about it. And also, I just want to mention that I saw this movie in 4DX. As a little side note, I heard this movie was actually filmed for IMAX, so I kind of wanted to see it that way initially, but I saw some people mention online that it kind of spoiled scenes actually because of the aspect ratio changes. Like when the movie fills up the whole screen for IMAX scenes, like that was supposed to be a sign that someone's gonna die. And I feel like that takes a little bit of the fun out of the scenes a little bit. Like I feel like part of the fun of these movies is not knowing like exactly when something's gonna happen, but I mean, they make it pretty clear like something's gonna happen soon, but I feel like knowing it's coming takes a little bit away from it. So I wasn't sure about IMAX, but then I realized that 4DX could be such a perfect format for this movie because it has the intensity you want, it has a lot of scenes that would utilize the effects, and it seems like the kind of movie where just being more immersed in it would make it even freakier to watch. This was actually my first 4DX horror experience, but I wasn't disappointed. I actually kind of loved how whenever someone died and like got blood splattered all over them, water would rain on you like you were being splattered with blood too. I mean, that may not sound like fun for everyone, but that actually made me even more squeamish by the deaths than I would have been otherwise. And I think that just kind of added a little bit of something to the movie. Not to mention the premonition scene was like crazy intense in the format. And there was actually this couple next to me, or this family rather, that they weren't sure what this even was when they sat down. Like they didn't know what 4DX was, and then I was telling them like, oh, it's not like 3D. It's like the seats are gonna shake, and you have like water sprayed at you, and like wind, and they were just like, oh, I don't know if I could take that. But they actually seemed to have a lot of fun with it. By the end of the movie, they seemed to be pretty entertained. So I don't know, like if you're kind of on edge about trying this format out, I think you could have some fun with it. But that's just a side note. Anyway, I was just a really big fan of this movie. I had a lot of fun with it, and it's really a film I'd happily rewatch in the future. Just easily the best in the franchise for me, and if any of the future installments want to be more like this one, I'll be there day one. Like, I just had such a good time with it. If you want more of these types of movies, go see them in theaters. Really support them. I think, like, if you're a big Final Destination fan, definitely check it out. I think you'll have a good time. If you're not even a big Final Destination fan, but these are your types of movies, like if you saw The Monkey and wanted to like it more but didn't, I think you'll have a good time with this one. It's not the kind of movie that's for everyone, obviously, but if it is up your alley, you probably will have a good time and enjoy it, just like I did. So I'm gonna give this movie a B plus. Not like a perfect movie by any means, just a really fun one. And that about does it for this episode. If you want to follow my reviews, you can find me on Letterboxd at MovieKing1224. You can also listen to this podcast on your favorite apps such as Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Amazon Music. If you have any comments or feedback, I would love to hear it and improve the show. And of course, if you've enjoyed this episode, please consider liking, subscribing, and hitting the notification bell to hear more like it. I appreciate you all so much for listening, and I'll talk to you next time. Thank you. Bye-bye.